Living below the line, the reality of the poverty line. How should we define and measure poverty in the U.S. today? In poverty studies, there may never be a perfect measure of poverty. However, it is important to acknowledge issues with the current measure and look towards future solutions. Therefore, we believe that today poverty should no longer be measured by the official poverty measure, but instead by the supplemental poverty measure as a temporary solution while capabilities measurement is developed. The official poverty measure is the current definition and measurement of poverty in the United States. It is an absolute measure which are thresholds or poverty lines that remain constant over time, developed by Molly Orshansky of the Social Security Administration that was adopted by the U.S. in the mid-1960s. The OPM measures poverty by looking at two categories: the resources available to a household and a set threshold. The resources available to a household are defined as the gross pre-tax income of an individual, so any income from a job like cash aid and Social Security and disability. The poverty threshold set by the OPM is defined by 3 times the cost of a thrifty food basket. This was based on Orshansky's research into what a not poor household spent on food and found that it was typically a third of their total budget. She then multiplied this by 3 to create the poverty threshold. This threshold has 2 adjustments, one for the size of the household and the other is an annual inflation adjustment. The OPM has remained unchanged with the exception of the inflation adjustment since its establishment in the late 1960s, and therefore carries a series of problems. First, it is wildly outdated for a modern society. An example of its outdated nature is its inability to account for any welfare programs and economic aid. Therefore, it neglects all in-kind aid and near-cash benefits like SNAPs, formerly food stamps, housing subsidies, Medicaid, utility subsidies, earned income tax credit, refunded tax credits, and temporary assistance for needy families. Without acknowledging the additional aid, the Census Bureau massively undercounts the economic resources available to households, according to Rector. The outdated nature is evident in its inability to account for modern households like cohabitating non-married couples, which provides inaccurate measurements of poverty and ineffectively distributed resources. The OPM does not account for non-discretionary expenses like childcare and transportation necessary for maintaining a well-paying job. The OPM does not include geographic adjustments, so it doesn't evaluate the elevated living costs of urban life versus rural areas. The final issue with the OPM is its binary nature. You are either in poverty or not. It doesn't show the depth of poverty. To reiterate, we believe that today poverty should no longer be measured by the OPM, but instead by the supplemental poverty measure as a temporary measure while a capabilities measurement is developed. By this measurement, we define poverty as experiencing social, economic, and material deprivation, preventing individuals from a life of well-being and human dignity. The supplemental poverty measure is a measurement developed as a supplement to the OPM. The SPM measurement was developed specifically to supplement the current OPM and not replace it entirely, therefore solving some of the most pressing issues without a complete overhaul. The SPM takes into account spending on food, clothing, shelter, and utilities across all households in the U.S., which is not a direct focus on income, but does correlate to it indirectly. Then they look at households in the 33rd percentile of FCSU spending and take the 33rd percentile amount of spending and multiply it by 1.2% to set the poverty line. They multiply it by 1.2% to account for other expenses outside of FCSU as a household has more spending than just those needs. Then the SPM is adjusted for household size, geographic differences in housing costs, and adjusted to reflect real changes in expenditures on FCSU. The SPM evaluates resources available to households through a more comprehensive lens than the OPM. The SPM includes all in-kind aid and near-cash benefits in the resource evaluation. Furthermore, it includes cohabitating couples and a broader scope of other non-traditional families reflecting modern society. Now that the SPM has been defined, we will evaluate major benefits to implementing the SPM in the interim. For starters, the SPM is current and is a better reflection of American society and the resources available to those in poverty. It encapsulates the numerous welfare programs that have been put into place in the years following the OPM and their effects on poverty thresholds. Beyond this, it more effectively distributes resources by accounting for changing household norms like cohabitation and child support. Its supplemental nature would only change the threshold of poverty, but would not impact any other matters, as the OPM will be utilized for allocation of welfare programs. The SPM provides a way to examine the effects of taxes and in-kind benefits on households and provides more quantitative information on the welfare programs. For these reasons, the SPM should be implemented as a temporary measure of poverty in the U.S. However, we are aware of its downfalls. For as much as the SPM solves the current measure, it is not comprehensive and still focuses on income. It does not look to a human's overall well-being or dignity. It is also still a binary measure that does not evaluate the depth of poverty or the security of those in poverty. Additionally, it is very complicated as reportings are challenging due to the expansive amount of information needed to look at the poverty experienced. For these reasons, we believe it should be important temporary fix, but the SPM should not be a long-term measure. This is why we suggest a comprehensive capabilities measurement to be developed to take the U.S. towards providing human dignity to all citizens.
In contrast to monetary measures of poverty, the capabilities approach is a social justice-based theory that assesses quality of life of individuals. Conceptualized by Martha Nussbaum and Amartya Sen, this comparative approach is evaluative and ethical, as it is founded on the belief that human dignity is intrinsic to every person and that all people deserve to live a life in which it is respected. The approach is incumbent upon the concept that individuals should have certain capabilities that allow them to choose to fulfill desired functionings or doings and beings. Capabilities are defined as a person's internal and external ability to achieve certain outcomes and are an important part of individual freedom. According to Sen, when a person's capabilities are fostered and their valuable functions are freely fulfilled, they are living a life of human dignity. Nussbaum asserts that while some capabilities are internal, when they are paired with external context, they become substantial freedoms. She delves further into this concept by listing 10 central capabilities ranging from bodily health to play, which she believes are essential to living fully. While Nussbaum's list is often contentious, the concept that people have the right to certain capabilities is crucial. The capabilities approach is essential to the measurement of poverty in America. It is a more comprehensive measure of quality of life than the OPM and the SPM. It acknowledges that poverty is not just a matter of materialism, but an issue of lacking the freedom to choose the life one wants to lead. Contrary to Rector's argument, poverty cannot be measured solely in terms of amenities. Determining people's quality of life is nearly impossible if the only thing considered is what they have in their house. This does not account for people's access to opportunities or their ability to live the lives they want to live. By recognizing this, institutions can develop policies and programs that foster capabilities such as more affordable healthcare programs, parks or recreational centers, and more accessible, high-quality formal education. While programs such as these may seem dependent on income, they address capabilities that allow for greater personal autonomy and growth. While the capabilities approach is more comprehensive and socially just than monetary measures, actually implementing it proves to be exceedingly difficult. Attempting to measure people's quality of life, while ideal in theory, is challenging in practice. Acknowledging this, the capabilities approach should be further developed as a concrete measure while the SPM is used as a temporary measure of poverty. Until the capabilities approach can actually be firmly applied in America, it is more rational to use the SPM, which is more far-reaching than the OPM. Additionally, this approach is arguably idealistic, as creating external context in which individuals are able to exercise all their capabilities is not only difficult but extremely unlikely. Despite this theory is invaluable, as it is a reminder that poverty can be an issue of social justice and human dignity. There is no simple solution to the poverty question. There will always be disagreement about how to define and measure poverty in America. However, it is imperative that society remembers the people before the policies. People's dignity should always be respected, and in order to do this, the definition must be expanded. The OPM should be retired, and the SPM and capabilities approach should be adopted.